While President Trump's been setting X ablaze with a relentless storm of posts, firing up his base for a massive $1.2 trillion bill that slashes over $1 trillion from Medicaid, pumps $150 billion into defense, and just barely scraped through the Senate, stealing every U.S. headline like a high-stakes drama, Canada's playing a sharper, quieter game, pouring its energy into laser-focused investments, business growth, and breaking free from reliance on American markets to dodge the political chaos. South of the border. In late June 2025, Ottawa nixed its planned 3% digital services tax, set to launch on June 30th, to clear the path for high-stakes trade talks with the U.S., zeroing in on Canada's supply management system for dairy, eggs, and poultry, a sore spot Trump keeps jabbing. On Fox News, he called Canada downright nasty to deal with, griping about tariffs as high as 400% on U.S. dairy, and on Truth Social, he doubled down, slamming Canada as a tough nut to crack in trade for hitting farmers with those sky-high tariffs and threatening fresh U.S. levies if the system stays locked, ramping up tension as negotiators gear up for fiery talks in Ottawa and Washington. Canadian officials are holding firm, calling supply management a sacred pillar, especially in powerhouse provinces like Quebec and Ontario, where farmers like Jean, a third-generation dairy farmer in Sherbrooke with 200 cows, rely on it to keep his family's legacy alive, supporting his 2 kids, aging parents, and a local co-op employing 20 that supplies milk to local schools. Trade experts warn it's a deal-breaker, with talks sparking heated debates in boardrooms, government halls, and rural town halls where farmers rally for protection, echoing battles from the 1980s dairy wars and 1990s WTO disputes. Meanwhile, Canada's not just talking tough, it's charging forward at full throttle, rolling out bold moves like a massive aluminum industry investment, skyrocketing exports to every corner of the globe except the US, and the industry minister throwing shade at Trump while unveiling a bulletproof plan to diversify trade and secure Canada's economic edge for generations. Let's dive into the aluminum boom first. Aluminary Alouette, a titan in Sept-Îles, Quebec, partly owned by Rio Tinto, is dropping a staggering $1.1 billion to overhaul its facilities, securing a game-changing deal with Hydro-Quebec for dirt-cheap, carbon-neutral electricity that's the lifeblood of aluminum smelting, a brilliant move in today's trade wars. Mirroring Canada's savvy plays during the 1980s softwood lumber disputes and 2018 USMCA talks. This hits at a critical moment, as Trump's 50% tariffs on imported aluminum, meant to prop up U.S. smelters, are backfiring big time, spiking costs for American companies like Constellation Brands, which is bracing for an extra $20 million in expenses this fiscal year, and smaller outfits like a Lansing, Michigan, auto parts supplier that axed 10 workers after aluminum prices jumped 15%, or a Duluth, Minnesota, construction firm that shelved a $5 million housing project when material costs surged 12%, leaving families in need of affordable homes in limbo. Canada, the top aluminum supplier to the US, is flexing serious muscle. Quebec alone produces 70% of North America's aluminum, making it a cornerstone for U.S. industries like automotive, aerospace, and construction, where aluminum prices have climbed 12% since the tariffs hit, hammering projects from Detroit car plants to Miami condo towers, Seattle aircraft hangars, Chicago skyscrapers, and Boston shipyards. Quebec's economy minister, Christine Fréchette, took to X, pounding the table that protecting workers and the economy is non-negotiable, especially for folks like Marie, a 20-year smelter veteran in Sept-Îles sweating her pension as tariffs loom, or her co-worker Luke, who's training his son to join the plant while volunteering at a local green energy co-op pushing solar panel installations. Alouette Smelter, employing 900 workers and churning out 630,000 metric tons yearly, is backed by a consortium including Rio Tinto, 40%, Austria's AMAG Metal, and Norway's Hydro Aluminium. The $1.1 billion upgrade will revamp reduction lines and casting operations, slashing energy use by 20% and cutting greenhouse gas emissions by 25% to meet global demand for cleaner supply chains, especially as European buyers like German carmakers, BMW, Mercedes, and French aerospace firms, Airbus, push for sustainable metals to meet EU carbon goals by 2030. The Hydro-Quebec deal locks in ultra-cheap, stable power, unlike U.S. smelters paying 30% more for electricity, shielding Alouette from North American energy market chaos and bolstering Canada's clout in aluminum trade disputes, much like its leverage during NAFTA renegotiations. With U.S. smelters limping at just 25% of pre-tariff capacity, Quebec's upgrades could keep the metal flowing south, even as Canada weighs retaliatory levies and domestic subsidies, like a $100 million fund for Quebec smelters, a $50 million grant for energy-efficient tech, a $25 million training program for 500 workers, and a $15 million sustainability initiative for eco-friendly smelting, plus a $10 million R&D fund for advanced alloys. Meanwhile, Industry Minister Melanie Joly, on a tour of Rio Tinto's Arvida plant in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, came out swinging, declaring, "We're in a full-on tariff war, and the battleground is our economy. Aluminum, steel, and autos are the front lines." Speaking live on LCN, she ripped into Trump's 50% aluminum tariffs as unjustified, illegal, and a direct assault on our workers and businesses, vowing to fight tooth and nail for communities like Saguenay, where 3,000 jobs and local businesses like diners, hardware stores, schools, and even hockey rinks depend on aluminum. At Rio Tinto, she saw over 1,000 workers, like Jacques, a welder supporting 3 kids in Saguenay, building Project P60, a high-tech expansion, and after talks with global execs, confirmed $200 million more in investments for 2026, plus a $50 million robotics upgrade creating 50 jobs, a $10 million safety program, and a $5 million community fund for local training. Joly also visited SA, an aluminum equipment maker employing 200, and the port of Saguenay, where she noted Canada's now shipping aluminum to Europe. Exports to Italy jumped 25% last month, with 10,000 tons headed to Milan factories for car parts, pivoting infrastructure to dodge U.S. trade barriers. When local execs groaned, 50% tariffs are killing us, Joly got it, promising to keep operations alive through funding programs like BDC and Canada Economic Development, which have $500 million set aside for small businesses like a Saguenay machine shop, where owner Pierre is scrambling to cover payroll for 15 employees after losing a $1 million U.S. contract. She blasted the red tape, calling 50-page applications a nightmare for small-town owners like Pierre, and pledged to cut paperwork to 12 pages within 60 days, with $10 million already disbursed to 50 Quebec firms, $5 million more for rural shops, and a $3 million microgrant for startups. On U.S. relations, Joly didn't hold back. Trump's a wild card. One day you wake up to a tweet that flips trade policy on its head. He's trying to squeeze us dry, and he's a brutal negotiator. She pointed out only the UK, after 6 grueling years post-Brexit, has scored a trade deal with the US, showing the uphill battle ahead, reminiscent of Canada's struggles during the 2018 USMCA talks and 1990s GATT negotiations. "We can't keep betting the farm on the US," she warned, rolling out a 3-pronged plan: short-term anti-dumping measures for steel and aluminum, medium-term liquidity and red tape cuts, and long-term goals like slashing project approval times from 5 years to 2 and boosting domestic demand through defense contracts, like a $500 million deal for Canadian steel and naval ships, a $300 million contract for aluminum in fighter jets creating 1,500 jobs, a $200 million missile component deal. Adding 300 jobs, a $150 million radar system contract, a $100 million drone manufacturing deal, and a $50 million satellite component contract. As research minister, Joly pushed for global talent, saying, "With academic freedom under fire in the US, I want the world's best scientists in our universities, driving breakthroughs in AI and clean tech, like the 200 researchers who joined UBC last year, 150 at McGill, 100 at Toronto's Mars Hub, 50 at Waterloo's Quantum Lab, 30 at Dalhousie's Ocean Tech Institute, and 20 at Laval's Robotics Center." Her message was crystal clear. Trump's tariffs aim to cripple Canadian industry, but Canada's hitting back by protecting jobs, propping up businesses, and opening markets from Europe to Asia. The numbers back it up. Last month, Canada's exports to everywhere but the US soared, shrinking the trade deficit to 5.9 billion Canadian dollars from a record 7.6 billion Canadian dollars, as exporters found new buyers and premium commodities offset weak U.S. demand. Only 68.3% of exports went south in May, the lowest share outside the pandemic, while shipments to other regions hit an all-time high, led by a 30% jump in gold to the UK, $200 million in London vaults, aluminum and pharmaceuticals to Italy, and crude oil to Singapore, which doubled its imports to 500,000 barrels. Canada's agri-food sector is thriving, with pork exports to Japan up 13%, thanks to trade deals like CPTPP and CETA, opening doors for high-quality, sustainable products like pulses, British Columbia salmon fetching $50 million in Tokyo, Manitoba lentils hitting $20 million in India, Nova Scotia lobster landing $30 million in Shanghai restaurants, Alberta beef scoring $15 million in South Korea, Saskatchewan canola reaching $10 million in Vietnam, and New Brunswick blueberries hitting $5 million in Dubai. Energy exports dipped 5.6% in May due to softer oil prices, but Canada's going all in on green hydrogen, with projects like Atlantic electrolyzer hubs in Newfoundland, employing 300, and export corridors to Germany and South Korea, projected to add $2 billion to GDP by 2030 and create 5,000 jobs in places like St. John's, Halifax, Dartmouth, and a $50 million wind energy project in Cape Breton, plus a $20 million solar farm in Prince Edward County. Manufacturing's tougher, especially in U.S.-tied sectors like autos, where a Windsor plant lost a $10 million contract, laying off 50 workers like Sarah, a single mom struggling with rent, but Canada's gaining ground in clean tech and advanced materials, with new battery plants in Ontario and Manitoba, like a $300 million facility in Windsor for electric vehicle components employing 400, and aerospace exports hitting 19 billion Canadian dollars. Fueled by R&D and partnerships for next-gen composites and 3D printing used in Boeing and Airbus parts, with a Montreal firm landing a $15 million deal for jet components and a Toronto supplier scoring $8 million for drone parts. Looking ahead, Canada's trade resilience hinges on doubling down, leveraging its green reputation, processing more minerals and agricultural goods at home, like a $50 million Manitoba pulse processing plant creating 100 jobs, a $30 million Saskatchewan canola facility employing 80, a $20 million Quebec maple syrup hub, a $15 million PI seafood plant, a $10 million Yukon rare earths facility, and a $5 million Nunavut fish processing unit, and fostering innovation in AI, biotech, and clean energy. With hubs like Toronto's AI cluster drawing 1,000 researchers yearly, Vancouver's biotech scene adding 200 jobs, Montreal's clean energy lab hiring 150, Calgary's renewable energy hub adding 100, Edmonton's hydrogen tech center hiring 50, and Winnipeg's AG Tech hub adding 30. If exporters keep pushing into fast-growing markets like India, Southeast Asia, and Brazil, where aluminum demand is up 20%, soybean imports rose 15%, and coffee imports hit $5 million, adding value domestically, and branding Canada as green and clean, the trade deficit could shrink to 4 billion Canadian dollars by 2026, paving the way for stronger growth. While Trump's chasing headlines with tariffs and tweets, Canada's building a future that doesn't bank on the US, proving it can take a punch and come out swinging. Thanks for watching. This channel runs on your support, no corporate cash here. If this hit home, smash that thumbs up, drop a comment, tell us how trade wars are hitting your town, what Canada should do next, or your thoughts on going green, and share it with someone who needs to know. Check out the next video on your screen. We picked it just for you.